South Jersey's home of the Sports Bash with Mike Gill.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, me too.
WENJ HD Millville, Atlantic City. A Town Square media station serving all of South Jersey. This is 97.3 ESPN. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Josh Hennig on a Tuesday edition of Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. We are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, where you can watch the show. Just follow 97.3 ESPN. We are live in the Matt Black Kia Studios. Matt Black Kia, they will get you approved today. Matt Black Kia, Black Horse Bike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Bryan Ohringer, former NBA Scout, will join us coming up at 6:20 tonight to get more into the NBA playoffs, Ben Simmons, the Sixers, and more. Bryan, on his own platforms, he responded to a lot of the conversation out there about Ben Simmons. So I asked him if he would come on the show to go a little more detail with our audience about his perspective on what Scottie Pippen had to say, what people online are saying about Ben Simmons. So he comes and gives his perspective at 6:20 tonight. As always, you can join the conversation as well at 609-403-0973 to get on the conversation. If you listen to the 97.3 ESPN FM, the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, 609-403-0973 is the text board. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. Comment on the web stream right there. We always get to your comments throughout the show. You know, I shouldn't be surprised, okay, that we are where we are with the Sixers team. And I shouldn't be surprised we are where we are with this Phillies team. But I am. I think at some point we all have to just accept that certain things are the way they are. You know, I keep having a conversation with I'll refer to this person as a friendly acquaintance of mine. I don't know if we're really friends. I don't know if we're not really friends, but we talk pretty often, this individual and myself. And I was explaining to this person the other day that, you know, part of life is you have to accept the reality put in front of you. And one of the problems is that we have been told by culture that we don't have to accept reality in certain scenarios, which is ridiculous. The reality is that the Philadelphia Phillies, the Philadelphia 76ers, are just not good enough. Or they're just not as good as we thought they were going to be. And with the Phillies activating Gene Segura and demoting Spencer Howard to AAA, I think it's just evident that the Phillies are having to live in reality. The reality that Spencer Howard is just not a starting pitcher right now at the major league level. I don't know if he'll ever be a starting pitcher at the major league level. I think that we overlook sometimes that when you have a young player, it takes time for them to find their way. Very rarely there you have these handful of phenoms who the very first time they step on the field, you're like, wow, this guy's amazing. You know, it doesn't always work out like that. You know, very rarely is a guy going to come to the major leagues and just dominate out of the chute or show you something immediately that is going to make them, oh, we know exactly what he is. When I look at this organization, the Phillies, they need to live in reality. And I think they're finally starting to live in that reality. Now, I can't promise you the Sixers are going to do the same thing, but I kind of hope they will because I know that Daryl Morey is in charge and that Daryl Morey is there. But when I explain to a friend of mine or just friendly acquaintance this situation, that you have to live in reality. The reality is a couple things with the Sixers. The Phillies are starting to realize they're just not good enough. The roster is just not good enough. The pitching staff is just not good enough. They're just not good enough as currently constructed. And for the Sixers and their fans, they have to accept the reality that just because Ty Lue and the Clippers are having success in the Western Conference Finals is not some sign that you ended up with the wrong coach. That's the new thing I'm seeing now online, is that the Sixers got the wrong Clippers coach. They got Doc Rivers instead of Ty Lue. And that way of thinking is just so distorted. And I get it that people are so desperate to find a boogeyman, find someone to blame. And I understand that people don't actually want to think for themselves sometimes, and I'm sorry I can't help some of you with that. But for the rest of you who are listening to 97.3 ESPN still, when you think about sports, if you want to be the person who blames the coach for everything, you're irrational. If you want to be the person who blames Doc Rivers for why the Sixers didn't make it to the conference finals, you're not watching basketball. I'm going to lay it out for you really, really clearly. Players weren't good enough. You actually had a game where Joel Embiid and Seth Curry were the only people to score against the Hawks in the entire second half of a game. That is blatantly unacceptable. And if you really think that's Doc Rivers' fault, if you think it's Doc Rivers' fault that Joel Embiid had 8 turnovers, if you think it's Doc Rivers' fault and that the Sixers should have had Ty Lue and everything would be fixed, that's just a load of ridiculous hogwash baloney, or whatever phrase you want to use. And obviously I'm cleaning it up because we're on the radio here. You can't go through life blaming everyone else in the world except for the people responsible because it doesn't fit your narrative. There's an old saying, there's facts and there are true facts. There are the facts that you find to support your argument because you don't want to hear any other truth. And then there are the true facts that people find to develop their arguments, to substantiate an opinion that is brought forth from that information. I choose to live in the latter. It's called being a realist. I think this attitude that the Sixers will be better off with Ty Lue is utterly garbage. Because the Sixers lost to the Hawks because the players on the floor couldn't get the job done. Because Joel Embiid was not 100%. Because he was playing on a banged up knee. There was no Danny Green to guide them on the court. Seth Curry gave everything he could, but it wasn't enough. Ben Simmons, for whatever psychological reason, was unable to do certain things on the court and was running away from his problems. Tobias Harris was missing easy layups. There were numerous guys who just didn't get the job done. And there's nothing the head coach could have done unless the head coach is going to sub himself into the game and start doing some of the things that you think should be happening. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter if it was Doc Rivers, Ty Lue, Larry Brown, Phil Jackson, Red Auerbach, or whoever on the sideline coaching the Sixers. They were going to lose that series. I thought a huge point was brought up by Mitch Lawrence today on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. And, Mitch is well known, if you listen to 97.3 ESPN for a long time, for his opinions about a lot of topics. And I don't always agree with Mitch, but I appreciate his passion and his fervor in giving his opinions. But this one resonated with me today. This is what Mitch Lawrence, Sirius XM NBA Radio, said just about an hour ago, right here on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill on 97.3 ESPN.
So they haven't replaced Jimmy Butler. Start there. That's their problem. We see it time and again, and I brought it up on your show. The Jimmy Butler loss has really hurt that franchise because they don't have a closer. They don't have a guy who you can depend on to finish a game. Ben Simmons, he's got head problems. He needs to see a psychologist. He doesn't want to shoot. Joel Embiid, unreliable from the get-go. History of injuries. He can't do it late in games. That's what Jimmy Butler did for him, and that's what they're missing. And so, yeah, Tobias Harris is overpaid. And I'm telling you, if he left, you could replace a guy like him.
That was Mitch Lawrence earlier today on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill. I'm watching the Clippers game last night. They have a closer. It's Paul George. He went out there and just got things done. He was unafraid. By the way, Reggie Jackson's been playing great. The dude's averaging over 22 points per game in now the 7 games without Kawhi. The Clippers are 4-3. You need someone who's going to say, I'm willing to take over this game and can actually do it. And Jimmy Butler was that guy. And the Sixers couldn't keep him because ultimately they chose Ben Simmons and Brett Brown over Jimmy Butler. And the process never replaced what he brings to the table. You don't need a Jimmy Butler clone. You need that personality, that mentality, that aggressiveness, that fervor, that passion, that desire. Jimmy Butler's not the best player in the world, but he wants to win more than you do. I can promise you that. He wants to win more than you do. He's willing to put in the work. He's willing to put in the time. He's not a top 5-10 player in this league, but he's the top 20 player because he is maximizing everything in his physical and mental arsenal to be all he can be. And I'm watching the Clippers game last night, and I'm seeing multiple guys make baskets in that second half, pulling away from the Suns late, making sure the game was won. Suns had a push. Clippers held them off. And it wasn't because Ty Lue was the coach and Doc Rivers wasn't. It was because the players themselves decided, we're not going to lose this game. We don't care that they have the championship hats and T-shirts ready for the Suns. We don't care that they have all the champagne lined up on ice for that team to go back to the NBA Finals. We are going to win this game. We will find a way to win this game. And the problem was the 76ers didn't have those kind of players. Just like I wrote at 973ESPN.com. Go check it out. Also 973 ESPN mobile app. There are lessons the Sixers can learn from the playoffs. And Paul George deserves credit. He has been doubted and ridiculed a lot in the past, but he has found a way to step up in multiple games without Kawhi Leonard to show that unlike a lot of players in the NBA, he's worth the money. At least for the Clippers. And right now, the Sixers don't have that guy. They don't have a Reggie Jackson or a Paul George. They don't have a Chris Middleton. They don't have these players. And by the way, Devin Booker played amazing last night. All right, don't get it twisted. DeAndre Ayton having a very subpar game for his standards is really part of the reason why it doomed the Suns last night. Everyone has to play well to win a championship. It can't just be one or two people. And you know what? If I am Philadelphia 76ers, I need to ask myself questions about, are these people who are currently here the best equipped people to help me win a championship? Because you know what the Clippers did? The Clippers let the sixth man of the year, Montrezl Harrell, leave to the Lakers, their crosstown rival. They traded for Rajon Rondo. They kept Pat Beverly. They got Reggie Jackson. Look at the Bucks. PJ Tucker and Bobby Portis have played huge roles for that team. It's not a coincidence that the Sixers supporting cast didn't get the job done, but the teams who are currently in the conference finals have guys who are getting the job done. And that's not the coach's fault. That's the player's fault. Might be the GM's fault as well. But it's not because Doc Rivers is here and Ty Lue is there. Don't get that twisted. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Coming up next, we'll be joined by former NBA Scout Bryan Ohringer. We'll get his perspective on the Sixers, Ben Simmons, the NBA playoffs, and more right here on Game Night with yours truly, Josh Hennig, on 97.3 ESPN FM. You can text it at 609-403-0973. To get on the conversation, 609-403-0973. Or you can chime in on the video stream at 973 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Don't forget the 973 ESPN mobile app. It's free with all your Sixers, Phillies, Eagles, Flyers, and South Jersey High School sports news. It's all available on the 973 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City.
The NBA playoffs continue.
Playoff P gives the Clippers their largest lead in the game.
Facing elimination, the Clippers respond with a critical Game 5 win. Now we return to Los Angeles. Can the Clippers survive once again to force a Game 7? Or are the Suns heading to the NBA Finals?
They hit us. They were too comfortable, and we got to be better.
Coverage begins tomorrow at 8:30 Eastern.
The NBA playoffs, exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM.
On some models excludes Corvette with GM financing, excludes prior sales. See dealer for details. As you know, most car dealers in our area are still having trouble getting cars and charging a lot more for them. But Bennett Chevy isn't like most dealers. We kept what you love, our famous GM supplier employee prices. It's incredible. You pay what our supplier employees pay and not 1 penny more. And Bennett also gives you all the rebates. That's up to 25% off MSRP. 25% off. Plus, we've still got available 0% financing to save you even more. Shopping for pre-owned? Well, Bennett's still paying a minimum $7,000 for trades. So if any old junker is worth at least $7,000 towards any pre-owned in stock, think of how much your good trade is worth. And Bennett's now an authorized lease return center for all brands. And with our non-commissioned sales staff paid on your satisfaction, not how much you spend, there's no pressure, no hassles. The best prices, low rates, the most for trades. Nobody beats Bennett. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Why would someone looking for a mortgage at the Jersey Shore take a loan from a company in Detroit or North Carolina or some other far-off place? Online mortgages promise a lot but don't always deliver. First Bank of Sea Isle City knows the Jersey Shore. We are local lenders. We use local appraisers and provide in-house processing. We understand the unique obstacles of financing in Cape May County. Don't take a chance. Local banking is better. Let us guide you. First Bank of Sea Isle City.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Game Night here on 97.3 ESPN. Josh Hennig hanging out with you on 97.3 ESPN FM, 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Sea Isle City. And we are joined right now on the phone lines. Bryan Ohringer, who's a video coordinator and scout in the NBA. Now it's Scout with Bryan, the podcast, Patreon, and Instagram is where you can check out all of his work. And he joins us right now on Game Night. Bryan, how you doing today?
I'm good, Josh. How are you?
Doing pretty good. And you know what? This time of year, people love to have opinions and have conversation. And you're someone who brings a lot of levity and clarity to a lot of this stuff. And you know, with all the conversations going on about Ben Simmons, you know, I feel like everyone has like an opinion or a perspective. And I wanted to get, you know, what is your overarching opinion of who Ben Simmons is and what he can be? Because I feel like a lot of these opinions out there, excluding you, are people who are just kind of like, you know, you're speaking out of emotion and not being practical or objective about the topic.
Yeah, I think the discourse on him has gotten a little overly sensational. I mean, I think, you know, getting to a Game 7 in the second round of the playoffs is no small achievement. And, you know, he had a lot to do with them getting there in the first place and being a all defensive type player. You know, the assists he has, the way he sees the floor and reads the game. Obviously, the most pressing issue in the playoffs was that, yeah, I mean, he did get the yips. He did get, you know, definitely afraid of being fouled, which, you know, forced him to pass that to Thibault, and that's an issue. But, you know, I think the Sixers are aware of it, and the plan to work with him all summer, certainly on the free throw shooting, I think is incredibly important because he has to at least be able to knock those down. But at the end of the day, I think he's still a very valuable player who, gets in his head a little bit too much, and you know, ultimately that was the fatal flaw in that Game 7.
You mentioned getting in his own head. And I know that one of the phrases Scottie Pippen used was that Ben Simmons is afraid of being humiliated, whereas Giannis is not afraid of being humiliated. I thought that was a very poignant thing because, you know, my big takeaway from Game 7, Bryan, and I said it multiple times on the air, was I think Ben Simmons, I don't know if he needs to see a shrink, a psychologist, a pastor. I don't know who he needs to see, but he needs help. To me, the issue with Ben is not physical. To me, it's mental, because anybody who's been to cover the Sixers, they know Ben Simmons would be out there swishing threes, swishing foul shots before the game. But if he is that trepidatious to do it during a game, to me, the issue is pretty much mental. It's not a physical issue.
Oh, 100%. I mean, without even a question. I mean, that absolutely was the reason why he passed that ball. I mean, he, you know, it's guys like Biedrins. I mean, you know, in the course of their career, I know there's Nick Anderson. I mean, there's guys that had that problem at the free throw line, and it got so mental that they were definitely afraid of being fouled to even, you know, have to be in that situation. And yeah, I thought Pippen definitely made some good points, and the honest observation's an astute one. You know, it's kind of like how there's not many guys who have that Kobe mentality who would rather shoot, you know, 0 for 30 than be, you know, 3 for 10 or something. But yeah, it does kind of take that fearlessness to be a star in the NBA. And, you know, Giannis has that mindset. Ben certainly doesn't. So I do hope, you know, he works with a sports psychologist or something on those things, and, you know, can maybe conquer those fears a little bit more, because obviously, you know, they need him to be playable in the playoffs.
Bryan, there's a lot of rumors out there about different teams that are calling the Sixers, potentially interested in him. Does it make sense, though, for the Sixers to maybe move on for him? Does it make sense for Ben to maybe move on from the Sixers and get a fresh start?
I mean, I'm sure Daryl Morey's exploring all options. I'm sure, you know, there's definitely some situations like Golden State that would be thrilled to have Ben. And yeah, I mean, you see how valuable he is because you hear pretty much almost every team in the league is interested in him and thinks he can, help them and be a great piece there. And that's, that speaks to his value. And that's probably why, to be honest, it's going to be really hard for the Sixers to get a fair enough return. I mean, if you can start talking about guys somehow that like Lillard or superstar scorers that become available to pair with Embiid, maybe that's a better pairing. And Simmons and Embiid have definitely had enough chances. It feels like that. Yeah, I mean, a fresh start's not the worst idea in the world, but I'm definitely skeptical that they could get enough value to make it worth trading a defensive player of the year type and guy that still brings so much positive to the floor. And again, it's his first year with Doc Rivers, and if he's able to work with the psychologist and get the free throw issues fixed, I mean, then I think he's still a perennial all-star type player. So there's still a ton of upside there. 25 years old, and definitely not something you want to give up on too early.
Bryan Ohringer joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at Scout with Bryan on Instagram, YouTube. Also check out the Scout with Bryan podcast and Patreon for even deeper NBA analysis all year long. That's Scout with Bryan. That's Bryan. Make sure you spell the name right when you search for him. Bryan, I want to ask you, one of the things I've noticed right now with the teams that are left in the NBA playoffs is they all have a supporting cast that is complementing the players. And it seemed like for the Sixers, as soon as Danny Green went out in that series, they lost that veteran on the floor. What do the Sixers need to do to improve this offseason to make sure that if they lose a guy like Danny Green again or someone like him in the playoffs, this kind of collapse, this type of falling apart that they had doesn't happen again?
Yeah, I mean, I think they do just need more of those, role player types. I think it's definitely going to be really important, their internal development. I mean, I think, Shake Milton made a big leap this year, but still has pretty far to go. Maxey had a good rookie year, but, didn't have a tremendous playoffs at times. And I think when you're using roster spots and guys like Tolliver and, George Hill's a good vet. He's been in the league a while, but he didn't have much juice left in the playoffs. I mean, I think they just kind of need to upgrade the fringes of the roster and fix a few of those spots. And like I said, continue to develop, obviously, Thibault, Maxey, those guys. The Hawks, for example, I mean, people look at it like it's some terrible loss, but I mean, that's a team that's well built for the playoffs. I mean, when you have on top of Trey, you also have Herter, Bogdanovich, Gallinari, Lou Williams. I mean, the playoffs, you need guys that can create their own shot and just go get a bucket. And the Sixers, quite frankly, besides Joel and Seth Curry at times, don't really have much of that, so I think they definitely could use some of those, maybe Lou Williams types, off the bench and see if they can get a little more, scoring to cover up, obviously Ben's biggest weakness, and allow him to sit in that dunker spot offensively, surrounded by guys that are super confident scorers.
Bryan, speaking of Tyrese Maxey, what is your perspective on him? I personally think that he has a great physical and basketball tools. He could be a really good basketball player. I don't think he's going to be a superstar or anything, but I think he could be, a bona fide starter in this league one day. What do you think of him?
Yeah, I think so too. I think he needs to, to develop his point guard instincts a little bit more and kind of, be a little more pass first than he is. I think right now he tilts a little more towards being a combo guard, which isn't the worst thing in the world. But, I think Doc had a tendency to want George Hill in there in the playoffs because, he kind of was a bit more of a calming presence and steadying force. But, those things come with time. I compared Maxey to Kobe White, honestly, doing his draft scouting. I think he reminded me a lot of Kobe with his speed and athleticism around the rim and floater game and all those things. So definitely a lot of talent. I think they just need to do obviously a lot of film study with him and the game will start to slow down. But I do think it's great that they have other ball handlers now that will allow Ben to honestly play a little more like Giannis does, right? Like how Giannis set screens and rolls and plays kind of as a four-man offensively at times. I think that's a key to Ben, is not having the ball in his hands all the time as well, getting him on the move a little bit more.
Brian, let's flip it over to the teams that are still playing in the postseason. Tonight, of course, we have the Bucks and the Hawks. I think it's pretty sad that Trae Young may not be fully healthy for the rest of the series, so it's probably going to doom the Hawks. So I wanted to ask you about the Bucks specifically. What has been the biggest difference for them this year compared to what they've been in the last couple of years, where people have kind of written them off and said they can't get it done, they can't have the job? Well, right now the Bucks look like they might make it to the NBA Finals for the first time in the franchise in a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think Giannis's fearlessness is certainly worth mentioning. I mean, he maybe was a little too fearless last year when he couldn't make a shot against the Heat, but he's improved his shot selection a little bit. He's taking less of the threes, obviously dominating the paint more, but he's also hasn't been afraid, like we said, at the free throw line. Even when he airballs a couple, he's not afraid to keep driving and he'll swish every other free throw, even if he airballs one or two. So that's been huge. I mean, obviously Middleton's an unbelievable scorer and has just been a lot more consistent this season. Drew Holiday's made a pretty big impact, and then also PJ Tucker, I think, mostly against Brooklyn, I mean, was just such a valuable piece to have on Kevin Durant. For my money, I think he's probably the best defender 1 through 5 in the whole NBA, and probably does the best job on KD of anybody out there. So I think he was super useful to have then, and was a great acquisition, to get a team like that to the next level.
You mentioned about Giannis's fearlessness. How much of it also is the fact, because I know that Pippen mentioned that Giannis, he's not afraid of the word he used, humiliated or embarrassed. To me, I think part of that, Brian, and you tell me, because you've been around NBA players, you've worked in the NBA with the Wizards and other teams. What is it about Giannis that makes him different? Because to me, from the outside looking in, it's the fact that he came from nothing. He had to work his way up in life, and he feels like, I've already been through the worst. What is missing a shot going to mean to me? And it feels like I almost see that kind of mentality in him on the court, where part of the reason why he's fearless is because he's gone through the worst in life already. What else could happen to him?
Yeah, I mean, he just, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it was a little bit like that viral clip, the 30 seconds of him, joking around with PJ Tucker at a practice, where he basically said, yeah, I've been to the bottom. I've airballed all these shots. It can't get, I've seen the worst, so it only goes up from here. And, he just kind of has a very joyful, kind of let it go personality, it seems. And, when you have that kind of relaxed nature, in terms of viewing failure that way, not being afraid of it, on top with a maniacal competitiveness, I mean, that seems to be a pretty good pairing. I'm not a psychologist, but it seems like that would benefit a lot of people, and that's kind of what we all strive for in life, even though, we obviously come short a lot. But yeah, I think you're right about Giannis's background, and you just see it in his eyes. You see a lot of guys airball a free throw or miss a shot, and they just, their eyes get big and they start to really get nervous. And Giannis, he just sticks to his routine. He does the same, 12, 13 seconds, whatever let him do on his free throw routine, and, he stays with it. So, yeah, it's a great, attribute to have and to be a star in the league.
Bryan Ohringer joining us here on GameNight on 97.3 ESPN at Scout with Brian on Instagram and YouTube. Check out the Scout with Brian podcast. For even deeper NBA analysis, make sure you go sign up for Scout with Brian on Patreon. Brian, in the Western Conference, we saw the Clippers on Monday night. They found the way to stay alive in that series. How impressive has this Clippers team been to you, and what has impressed you the most about them, considering the fact that they're doing this without Kawhi Leonard, who is easily their best player?
Yeah, they're a super resilient team, and I think honestly Ty Lue has been the most impressive to me. I mean, obviously, he's getting a lot more talk about his record down 0-2 and his record in big game fours and things like that. But yeah, I mean, he's just made all the right adjustments. He's continued to stay positive through everything, and and just believe in his team's resiliency, and they've proved him right. I mean, they just, they do it by committee. They do it playing with a super small lineup at times. But, Reggie Jackson's gone from, acceptable role player during the regular season to like superstar in the playoffs. I mean, I don't remember, ever really seeing anything like this. The way he's playing is outrageous. I mean, Patrick Beverley's gone from in and out of the rotation to, being a lockdown defender on Devin Booker. So they got a lot of guys contributing, and obviously Paul George deserves his credit for his 41 last night, and has shown that he's capable still of being the best player at times on the team. So, I've been definitely impressed with their resiliency, and definitely the job Ty Lue's done has been as good as anybody in the league.
Can they actually finish off the Suns without Kawhi, or was last night's game just kind of like a unique situation where they found a way to win, but the Suns will still find a way to win this series?
In my mind, it's almost a coin flip at this point. I mean, I think, obviously Phoenix is going to be really motivated after last night. I thought a lot of guys, didn't have anywhere close to the performance they needed. I thought Aiden was pretty passive, and, you can bet. I mean, Monty, Chris Paul, all those guys are gonna jump on him in film session, and for sure tomorrow they're gonna come out, 5 times more intense, super locked in, and do everything they can to end it in 6 on the Clippers floor. But if the Clippers can survive that and maintain home court, win on their home floor, you go to a game 7 where really anything can happen. So, I think the fact that the Suns have 2 chances, whereas the Clippers, down to their last one, puts it maybe a little bit in their favor. But I still think the Clippers have proven time and time again that, you can't discount them because they're a super competitive group, and, they're going to scratch and claw and do everything they can to stay alive.
Brian, one more before I let you go, and always appreciate your time in the conversation here on 97.3 ESPN. We see Ty Lue. He's guiding the Clippers right now. He was, he only won because of LeBron, right? Monty Williams, he's never won a championship. Budenholzer's never been to an NBA Finals. You have Nate McMillan down in Atlanta, kind of like reviving his coaching career. Here in Philadelphia, everyone wants to, blame the Sixers for years on Brett Brown, and now the Sixers lost the 7 games. They want to blame Doc Rivers. How should we, not how do we as currently, but how should we gauge and look at coaches in terms of their value for a team in the postseason? Not the way we see it on Twitter, but the way we should be seeing it when we're watching the game.
Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line at the end of the day is that all these coaches, to be honest, are really, really good at their job. They've been basketball lifers. They've lived and breathed the game their entire lives. They've surrounded themselves with, really smart basketball minds, good assistant coaches. I think at the end of the day, it's probably 90% about the players. I give Ty a lot of credit, and like I said, I think he's done, the perfect job for this Clippers team. But at the end of the day, it's, he's nothing without Paul George's performance last night, without Pat Beverley's competitiveness, and like you said, people crushed Brett Brown, and then Doc Rivers comes in, and basically the same thing happens because of, the limitations of the players. The same limitations that Brett Brown had to deal with in Ben Simmons are hard to overcome. The same, thing that the Jazz keep running into every playoffs with Rudy Gobert's, lack of physical dominance come playoff time is holding them back, I think coaches can only take you so far at the end of the day. It comes down to the Devin Bookers, the Chris Pauls, the Trae Youngs, the Giannis's, how far is your superstar ultimately going to take you? So, I think ultimately coaches for the most part are pretty damn good at their jobs, and players game, and the organizations that have a little more continuity, I think, and trust coaches, to be there for the long run, I think tend to have a little more success.
He's Bryan Ohringer. Check him out on Instagram, Scout with Bryan, on YouTube, Scout with Bryan, the Scout with Bryan podcast. And for deeper NBA analysis, Go follow him on Patreon and sign up. That's Scout with Bryan. That's Bryan. And he joined us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Bryan, great stuff today.
Thanks again, Josh. Always enjoy it.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. We'll get to your thoughts and comments coming up next here at 609-403-0973 is the text board for all of you listening on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app powered by First Bank of Seattle City. Also, we are live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Kyle Dubray is commenting up a storm, so we'll grab a couple of his comments over here on the YouTube stream. You can also comment on the YouTube stream if you watch the stream. Just jump in the stream, jump in the comment section, join the conversation right here on Game Night, as well as the Sports Bash with Mike Gill, Game Night with Josh Hennig, the Locker Room with Billy Schweim on Saturday, Sunday, and more right here. Just follow 97.3 ESPN on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And, of course, as I mentioned, text board is open, 609-403-0973. If you listen to 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, it's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City.
The NBA playoffs continue.
Hits again. A 20-point fourth quarter for Chris Middleton. Ties his playoff career high with 38.
After dropping game one, the Bucks respond with 2 straight wins. Can they make it 3 straight? Or will Trae Young and the Hawks tie the series up at 2 games each? Game 4 of the Bucks and Hawks. Coverage begins tonight at 8 Eastern on ESPN.
The NBA playoffs exclusively on 97.3 ESPN FM, South Jersey's sports leader.
You have the choice, whether it's going out for dinner or ordering takeout at a local restaurant or buying that new outfit from a local boutique. Those choices help to put money back into your community. And Town Square Media South Jersey puts a spotlight on local businesses.
Ambient Comfort Heating and Cooling Professionals. AmbientComfortNJ.com.
Filling Marble and Tile Outlet, Philadelphia Avenue and Route 30 in Egg Harbor City. FillingMarble.com.
Dennisville Fence, serving you since 1952. Be the envy of your neighborhood.
East Coast Roofing, Siding, and Windows services all of South Jersey. If you call, they'll show up. Call East Coast today at 609-646-1444. Online at eastcoastroofing.com.
Comfort Now by Bob McAllister. Improve the comfort in your home. Call 609-400-1005 and ask about discounts and rebate incentives. Visit iwantcomfortnow.com.
Thank you for supporting your local businesses. From Town Square Media, South Jersey.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig here, live in the Matt Black Kia studios. Yes, Matt Black Kia. They want to get you approved today. Matt Black Kia in the Black Horse Pike, Egg Harbor Township. Visit them online at mattblackkia.com. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. We're also live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Get to all of your comments in just a moment, as we always do each and every show here on Game Night on 97.3 ES. Before I get to your guys' thoughts and comments, the Phillies lineup for tonight, I like this lineup. I don't love it, but I think it's a in terms of how it's structured, is definitely an improvement. You got Luke Williams leading off, followed by Segura, who's back in the lineup tonight. They just activated him today. JT Realmuto, 3, Harper, 4, McCutchen, 5, Hoskins, 6, Bohm, 7, Torreyes, 8, and then the pitcher, 9, Velasquez. Now, I don't know if they're going to win the game or not because Velasquez is pitching, but I like the fact that you're putting guys who have shown the ability to be contact hitters at the top of the lineup ahead of the guys who are supposed to be the RBI men, Realmuto and Harper. McCutchen, I think it makes sense putting him behind Harper to give Harper a little more protection than Hoskins is going to afford him. Hoskins is not a real protection guy. And listen, I don't dislike Rhys Hoskins, but I think that I think we were all sold fool's gold. Okay. I was suckered like the rest of you. All right. I was drawn in and manipulated like everybody else to think that Rhys Hoskins was going to be the next first base slugger for this team. And instead, he's turned into a guy who can't trust to be a fielder at all. All right. He's barely marginally good enough to be a first baseman in Major League Baseball. He's inconsistent with his power numbers. He's someone who his big thing was always got a great eye at the plate. He can get walks. He can get on base. But the year he had 116 walks, he had a 226 batting average. So far this year, he has 16 home runs and 43 RBIs. There's a ton of dudes who can get 16 home runs and 43 RBIs and bat 224. I'm just not impressed. If the Phillies were to trade him before the deadline to get some other players, I wouldn't be mad. I definitely wouldn't. And I think that McCutchen is much better protection for Harper than Hoskins at this point in all of their careers. All right. A couple of your comments. First, go to the text board at 609-403-0973. We'll go to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We got a message from Tom in the Villa. Says, I don't understand why everyone is so upset with Doc Rivers. They all knew he had a reputation for coming up short in the playoffs, even with good teams. Why the sudden outrage? That's from Tom in the Villas. Well, Tom, a couple things. First of all, I think the outrage with Doc comes down to the fact that people want someone to blame. If you're someone who never liked Ben Simmons or has been disenchanted with him, you're going to blame Ben. If you're someone who likes to blame the coach for anything and everything you can get away with, you're going to blame Doc. If you're someone who never liked Embiid, you're going to blame Embiid. If you're someone who never liked Tobias Harris, you're going to blame Tobias Harris. It's just the nature of the world we live in. What people do is they say, I don't like something, and as soon as they have evidence of the person or the thing they don't like may be bad or not great, they latch onto it like a leech, and they just suck it dry until no one wants to listen to them anymore. And I think that this idea that Doc has a reputation for coming up short of the playoffs, I think it's very misguided. You go back to the teams that he coached over the years, the two teams, the Clippers, that had problems, they were also very flawed rosters. I know hindsight is 2020, but look back at those teams. You had Chris Paul, JJ Redick, Blake Griffin, and DeAndre Jordan. So you had two guys who their entire offensive repertoire was built around them dunking the ball and scoring inside. Chris Paul orchestrating the entire team. And JJ Redick was your number 3 scorer. They never got a bona fide another wing scorer on that team. And that was the beginning of the end for them. They never found that 3 guy. I think at one point they thought that Paul Pierce was going to be that guy, but Paul Pierce was way past his prime at that point. So they traded Chris Paul. And Doc Rivers last year had a problem, but again, it was in the bubble. And as time progresses, we're starting to wonder how much would happen in the bubble would have happened in real life. Would we saw Paul George last year in the bubble, see him this year in the bubble? Is that the same Paul George? Might not be. So I think with Doc Rivers, you got to go through his whole resume. All right. He should have 2 rings. It wasn't for Kendrick Perkins getting injured and some questionable calls that Game 7 in terms of fouls versus the Lakers. Doc Rivers, his 1-3-1 loss was as an 8 seed versus the 1 seed when he was in Orlando. So do we really even count that one? I don't think Doc is a bad coach. If you think Doc is a bad coach, then you got to name me someone who's better. Everyone hates the coach, but then they can't name you someone who's better. I'm telling you right now, it doesn't matter who was on the sidelines in Game 7 of that Sixers game. They were going to lose. They were going to lose because the players fell apart. Your superstar can't have 8 turnovers and then you win a game. It's just unhabitable. That's not Doc's fault. That's Joel's fault. All right, Kyle has a bunch of stuff on the stream here, so I'm gonna get these really quickly. I know I went long on Tom's comment, but Kyle, you can always chime in tomorrow. We have a longer conversation about this. Kyle says, "Why the push to trade Ben when we can trade Tobias?" This was the main thing I wanted to get to, Kyle. You're gonna trade Ben because Ben's contract is more tradable. Tobias Harris's contract is more hefty and more cumbersome than Ben's is. And number 2, Ben has a resume that is much more attainable in terms of a trade. You have a 3-time All-Star, 2-time first-team All-Defense, and a 1-time NBA All-Third Team. Ben Simmons has the resume to match the contract. Tobias doesn't. Teams don't love Tobias as much as they'd be interested in Ben Simmons. It's just a reality. And I understand that I don't think you hate Tobias. I like Tobias. But I think right now Tobias doesn't have the resume to gain you the return on investment. Now, the problem is that the same accolades that makes Ben tradable is always some reasons, but we should keep him as well. So it's a catch-22 either way. We'll get more into this tomorrow on Game Night. I'm Josh Hennig. Have a good night.
This weekend on Major League Baseball on ESPN Radio, the Subway Series returns. The NL East leading New York Mets head to the Bronx to face Aaron Judge and the New York Yankees.
Swing and a drive, left field, way back, and it's gone. Aaron Judge keeps them on their feet.
The Yankees and Mets. Coverage begins Saturday at 12:30 Eastern.
Listen to Major League Baseball on 97.3 ESPN.